What's up, everybody? Thank you for making it this far and checking out the channel. We did a little poll on Instagram, and quite a few of you guys wanted to check this thing out, have me do a little video, a little background of it. So this car started off in my possession about 4 years ago. It had sat under a tree for about 8 years. It was originally black. It was beat up. It was actually the first car I ever learned to drive manual on, and probably one of the first brake jobs I ever did on a car. It was a friend of ours who had owned it, and after I bought this house, I wanted a little project car. Got in touch with them and said, hey, you still got that car? Still for sale? What you doing with it, And he said, just come check it out. See what it was like, see if I liked it or not. So we went out to his place. I think it was actually at his parents' house. And like I said, it had been sitting under a tree for about 8 years, roughly. So it was pretty rough. It had, I believe from what the PDR guy said, who took out the dents, it had about 400 dents in it from a hailstorm. The rockers were completely gone on it, so we had to hand make those. It had holes in the floor, and it was pretty bad. I believe the front main seal was leaking horribly. Could barely drive the car without losing a couple quarts of oil just going down the road. As soon as we got the car to the shop, actually the fuel line and I believe a brake line broke right when we got there, so it was right on its last legs, to say the least. But we picked it up only for $1. It's kind of the cool story that everybody likes to hear. And we started working on it right away. Tore the car down basically to nothing to get it ready for paint. Obviously prior to all the carbon. It was originally supposed to be like a Ford Tuxedo Black, I believe. And then we decided to paint it white. Everybody had a white car, so kind of joined the club, and we went with I believe it was a Arctic white from a Corvette as kind of a base, with a Toyota Pearl in it. So it's actually a pretty cool color in the sun. Kind of color shifts a little bit. After that, we went and swapped in pretty much stock 4th Gen 3S engine, stock trans, stock axles, which we still have to this day, believe it or not. A lot of people don't believe me with that. The engine came from Prime MR2, back when they did a lot of their swap stuff. It had a upgraded billet turbo, which pretty much was the worst thing anybody could have ever asked for, as far as I'm concerned. I think I went through about 4 or 5 of those. Something to do with the piston ring inside of the turbo housing. It just didn't survive. I tried different oils, I tried different this, tried different that. It just wasn't surviving at all. After about 300-400 miles, you could basically smoke out a neighborhood. And it wasn't a pleasant time, especially when I had just put this car all together and was really excited to race it, drive it, hang out with my friends. It was horrible. Fast forward a little bit, I went to a stock CT20B from a Celica GT4, just like this. And that turbo actually provided me with a lot of satisfaction. I think it lasted a whole summer. Did a lot of racing on it, a lot of half-mile stuff, and it was awesome. I then switched to, it was, I believe, a billet CT20B from Turbo Bay, which was awesome. The only thing that I didn't really care about was I seemed to lose quite a bit of down-low response. And as much as I liked it, I came home one day and I was just kind of cruising around on the internet and I came across ATS Racing and I was like, you know what? I've seen these guys post before, checked out their website, and actually got on Facebook Messenger. And I believe I shot Scott. No, it might have been Aaron. I believe I shot Aaron a message right away and I was like, hey, checking out this GT3071 kit you guys offer. Can you make it for a Celica? And really without hesitation, it was, yep, no problem. We can do that. Just might take a little more customization. And it was no problem. And I guess that's really where the dawn of my help from ATS came. I got the turbo kit, put it on, it fit perfectly right away. There was no problems. Yeah, and we went, I believe we put the kit on, and it was like 2 or 3 days later, we went to a half-mile event, and it did 147, I believe, in the half-mile, which was pretty good. It was on stock ECU, stock injectors, stock bottom end Gen 4, with just a ATS GT3071 kit. That day I turned it up a little bit. It was making about 19 PSI. Obviously running water injection. That was kind of my big thing with this. So I ran that for a while and it was even more laggy down low than the CT20B with the billet upgrade. Not that I really cared because it really made up for it on the top end. It made about 330 wheel horsepower with that setup. But I just decided that I found a good deal on a set of Eagle rods one day from a guy on Facebook. And I was like, you know what? Let's start building this engine. So I started gathering parts, started pulling the engine apart. I built my first engine, I guess you could say. I left the block in the car, honed it out, put everything back together. We put cams in it. Then we decided to bring it down to Texas from Michigan to have ATS tune it, specifically Scott, who, if you ever had him tune your car before, he is awesome. I really like the way he handles things. Does a great job, super friendly. Always can talk to him about anything. Helped me with a lot of stuff. We got down there, drained the car of the 93 that I think was in it. We then went and put E85 in it for the first time. Loaded it up, strapped it down on the dyno. We made a bunch of pulls right away. Started noticing that the car really wasn't making the power that I had thought maybe they had, expected as well. So we did some stuff, and after about an hour or so of Scott playing on the computer, we started to get some of that power back. It's been a couple of years now, so I don't really exactly remember what had gone down. But at the end of the day, on their dyno, which is an older dyno jet, it reads a little lower. We ended up making, I believe it was like 415 wheel horsepower, somewhere around there, and like 360 foot-pounds of torque. And that setup really dawned a new era for me. I got to experience, although it wasn't a lot of power, I got to experience what a bigger horsepower car kind of felt like. Seeing as this car is so light, very short gearing. And I had a lot of fun with it. Did a lot of racing. We went to Indianapolis and did a streetcar takeover. Unfortunately, the way that the event was set up, it was so busy that we kind of just got shoehorned into racing whoever. It wasn't so much you picking or anything like that. So I actually lined up against a guy who, his car was much faster than mine. At about, I would say, probably the 800 or 900 foot mark in the quarter mile, 1,320 feet, he basically slammed on his brakes and still had me by probably a car and a half. So I actually got eliminated right away, which is kind of disappointing, but it was nice to be at a big event, kind of get the feel for it. After that, we went to a half-mile event at the end of the year, and we ended up running 155 miles an hour. Very windy that day. Also, it was pretty warm out for being kind of a fall day. I figured it would probably do about 160, but I was happy nonetheless. After that, we went to our first ice cream cruise in Omaha, Nebraska. I was a little disappointed that we couldn't race, but due to the weather, the track, I-29 Dragway, was actually underwater. So unfortunately, we couldn't do any racing, but the car show nonetheless was awesome. We actually, last year and this year, both years, we got VIP for Ice Cream Cruise, which is awesome. That's hand-selected by the guys at 1320. So the fact that this car actually gets acknowledged by those guys is relatively cool. The first year we actually got top 50 out of, I think it was a couple thousand cars, so that was just super cool. We brought the car back, and I believe it was probably one of the last days we were actually going to drive the car with some friends. I went to start the car, and it barely turned over. Kind of sounded like it was hydro-locked, which it was, in a sense. But I didn't know that. I was a little nervous right away. After it cranked over a few times, cleared itself out, it was definitely down a cylinder. You could hear it. So I shut the car off, pulled the plugs right away. And unfortunately, cylinder 3, the plug was just caked in burnt coolant, I guess you could say. So I kind of knew right away that either we had lifted a head, punched through a head gasket, or something else. I was pretty disappointed, to say the least. I mean, I only had a year on the engine that I just built, less than a year basically, and it just sucked. It was a horrible time. I knew that the fix for it was going to be expensive. I knew that if I wanted to grow and be faster and more competitive with this car, it would mean that there would be some serious financial obligations to be taken care of. But luckily, once again, I was able to talk to ATS. They were able to help me out with an awesome deal on a 2.3 liter Super Stroker that they offer. It was awesome. They helped me out big time in a time of need, and as much as I've posted it online, I don't think they have ever really understand how much that they have helped me out. So thank you to those guys, especially Aaron and Scott. You guys are awesome. So I spent the next couple months assembling the engine. Obviously, they sent short block. So rods, pistons, all the goodies put together. All I basically had to do was put a head gasket on it, studs, and drop my head on it. In the meantime, when that was being assembled by them, I went and took the cylinder head and just kind of cleaned some of the casting marks off of it. I didn't port it or anything. Left it basically stock. I did put upgraded springs and retainers in the car, or I should say the head. We run GSC 268 billet cams, so I kind of wanted to rev it a little higher than we had been revving it. I think we had the rev limiter about 7,200 with the stock springs in it, with the built Gen 4. So I wanted to rev it a little higher. Plus, we'd be running a little bit more boost as I upgraded from a standard GT 3071 to the new GTX Gen 2 3071. After we put it all back together, we brought it down to the dyno local to me and had Scott remote tune it from down in Texas, which was a pretty unique experience, to say the least. To have someone else drive your car while you have a laptop in your lap, basically watching everything he's doing on the phone with him as well. It was a really cool experience to have done. And at the end of the day, the car performed flawlessly. We made a boatload of torque, pretty decent power. Touched up on some other things here and there, which was really nice. Then put the car away for a couple months because it was winter then. Once spring rolled around, I took the car out, and I had been used to being able to put all the power down in third gear. So the first time I go out, I pop it in third gear, put it to the floor, and instantly created a like 80 some hundred RPM smoke show. It was eye-opening to say the least, but also pretty cool. Throughout the summer, we've done a whole bunch of stuff to kind of combat that. We have basically a momentary switch that we can run wastegate pressure. So I believe on wastegate it makes like 430 wheel horsepower. So this button right here, that one is the basically boost control button. Allows you to tame it down a little bit for first, second, and third, which is, it's nice. Keeps it drivable in a sense. Nice for launching the car because, like I said, we're still on the stock S53 transmission with something like 217,000 miles and stock AutoZone axles, which have been in this car basically since day one. I'll show you guys the engine here. What we got here is basically a roundabout Gen 4 looking engine, I guess you could say. To any 3S lover, you would think that's a Gen 4, but really below it is a 2.3 stroker. Still retaining the stock intake manifold, which definitely could be limiting us, but it's been working really, really good for us so far, so I haven't changed it. We run a water-to-air intercooler by Frozen Boost. I believe this one's something like the 600 horsepower core. I'm not really sure. I've had really good luck with it. We run a Rule 2000 bilge pump in a 5-gallon tank in the trunk, so it provides really, really good flow. We also run a dual pass heat exchanger up in the front. Kind of hard to see, but hiding out right in there. We have a Sora exhaust manifold. It's custom. It has a CT20, well, just a CT flange on the bottom of it, and then using the ATS adapter with the tile MVS. We then had that wrapped by header shield, which if any of you guys have ever had issues with intake air temps, anything like that, highly, highly suggest these guys. They do awesome work, and I've seen a really, really good reduction in intake air temps with that. We also run water injection. I believe it's 1,000 cc nozzle in that. Just recently, we also got rid of the PCV system. Kept popping it out under boost, mainly because I believe the line was just too loose on the PCV valve. I didn't have a zip tie or any clamp or anything on it, so it was popping off. But needless to say, I wanted it to breathe better, so we upgraded to a little Jegs kit there, kind of custom made. As far as the engine, that's basically everything that goes on here. We run ID 2000 injectors, which I believe are only at like 50 or 60% duty cycle, which is crazy. We run a single Walbro 450 in-tank pump. I believe this is a 6.3 hot side. There's no turbo blanket on it right now. I actually spilt coolant on the old one, and then it cracked and became all brittle, so we're going to get a new one there. This is a 4-inch carbon tube. Basically all the carbon you see here, as far as on the car, comes from Carbon Microsystems in Latvia. Worked with Daniel the past couple of years here. He is awesome. Just as big of a help from him as ATS. Really, I don't think this car would be where it is without guys like that. So I'll go through here and kind of show you all the carbon that came from him. The hood is a VIS hood. It was actually kind of the first thing I ever bought for this car. It's nice, but it is heavy. It's kind of deceiving. The bottom here is all fiberglass. So it's just a carbon, I guess, skin over the top, you could say. The cooling panel here, that's done by Carbon Microsystems. That was one of the first things I also got from him years and years back. I'll go ahead and shut the hood here. The fenders here, these are Carlos Sands wide body fenders from Carbon Microsystems. The car is kind of dirty right now, so it's got some dust on it and such, so it's going to look a little crappy probably in video. These are also by Carbon Microsystems. They're the TTE Rally mirrors. They're super light. I believe they weigh like 1.2 pounds or something. It's just crazy. Also, these doors are made by Carbon Microsystems, and they are absolutely awesome. Everything fits. I don't have door panels on them, so it's kind of nice to be able to see what it looks like on the inside here. But every nut and bolt and hole was all pre-drilled, ready to go. You really can't beat that quality for the price that he offers. We got rid of the tweeters here. I just made a little carbon piece to fit in there. The sunroof is also a delete made by him. I believe you can buy just the upper piece if you want to retain your sunroof, but the sunroof delete is about a 30-pound reduction. So we went ahead and did that. It's kind of hard to see, but it's riveted in. And also, new, for me at least, the carbon front bumper. I run these block-off plates in the hopes for better aero, I guess you could say. A lot of the air going into the car, or I should say into the engine bay, basically is turned into lift. And on a front-wheel drive car, lift at high speeds is usually not good. Obviously not going to lift the car off the ground, but it could be enough lift that you start sacrificing traction. And speaking of traction, we just upgraded to M&H Racemaster 235/60/15s, which for those who have seen this car in person with the Mickey Thompson 225s, this tire is like a monster truck tire compared to that. M&H does say it's relatively close to the Mickey Thompson, but I don't really believe so. Quite a bit bigger and quite a bit grippier. And they're awesome. I love them. We obviously have Bellic wheels. These are their single beadlock wheels, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Hands down, one of the sexiest wheels. Really, really defined this car when we first put them on. On the vehicle right now, we do have their skinnies. They're a billet one-piece skinny. Unfortunately, we won't be able to run those when we race at TX Duque. So what we will be using are these over here, which are Bellic wheels as well. But we have a really skinny, I forget what size they are. 195 tire. Try to keep the weight down, rotational mass down. We still use the stock brakes up front. We do have upgraded pads, EBC pads. Still use the stock drum brakes in the back as well. This car is a full glass car. We don't have any plexiglass or anything like that. A lot of the racing I do, they do not want plexiglass or anything like that. So there could be weight to be saved there, but we won't be doing that anytime soon. Should also talk about this. This is the, I guess you could say, the hater starter tool. A lot of people don't like this. A lot of people say this car doesn't need a parachute. But a lot of people that I've taken for drives probably think it does need a parachute. But really the reason is we run stock drum brakes. We run stock front brakes, and in a half mile or anywhere, if these brakes fail or fade, it's really, really nice to have a backup. Touching base on safety, we do have basically an enhanced roll bar. So we have a main hoop, bars going back to the strut tower area, I guess I could say. This is a NHRA approved door bar. I believe it's good for like 8 something, high 8s, low 9s. Carbon tillet seat. A lot of people think that this is going to be uncomfortable, but man, could not be more wrong. It really fits your back. I know maybe on video it doesn't show it very well, but it just fits your back really nice. Super comfortable seat and really, really light. I believe it's actually a half a pound lighter than the all aluminum Kirky over there. Stock gauge cluster. We do have a tablet over there to kind of monitor stuff. It's hooked up to a Bluetooth device that's connected to the ECU, which we run a ECU Master EMU Classic. It's the basic entry-level ECU from ECU Master. It's nice. Doesn't have as many inputs and outputs as I would probably like, but it does have some cool features, which all my friends probably know what this button is. That one is the rolling launch control, rolling anti-lag. Basically, for people who do roll racing, it's almost like brake boosting on steroids at the flick of a button. It's awesome. Kind of an unfair advantage if you ask me. So the next couple things here that I'm going to talk about are basically what we're going to be doing, upgrading, I guess you could say. So everyone said, yeah, Carbon Microsystems makes these. Yes, I know. They're in the mail. They'll be here. The next big thing he's doing is the trunk. This trunk here, from everything I can gather, weighs somewhere between 27 to 30 pounds. So I'm expecting the carbon trunk to weigh probably 5 pounds, maybe less, I don't know. So a good reduction in weight there. I would like to move the ice box up to the front of the car. Try to get some of the weight past the front wheels. Being a 5-gallon tank means that's going to be roughly about 40 pounds of water, ice, etc. Plus you have lines going from the back of the car to the front of the car carrying water. So there could be about 45 or 50 pounds of extra weight that doesn't need to be back there. It can be pushed up front. So that's going to be the next thing. We may possibly go and block this off as well. There's quite a big gap here for air to cool the radiator and the heat exchanger. We would also do a tee off of the water injection and probably do like an intercooler sprayer almost in front of that, even though I've never really seen too big of a spike in water temperature or intake air temperature by blocking that stuff off. Also another little project we're probably going to do, maybe for TX2K, although these are really, really pretty. I may block these off, which I've already started kind of making a little template here. So just a piece of carbon. We'll probably glue nuts on the back side of this, and it would go right there. So maybe a little benefit to aero, not really sure. As you can see, I love carbon. I got a whole sheet here. Got this. We were cutting stuff out over here. We did make a little diversion panel right here out of carbon. Kind of hard to see. Just to force air into the radiator and heat exchanger. I would like to do a carbon floor from basically the front bumper back a ways. Try to help out with some of that aero. Also tomorrow, I believe we're going to be getting in the Carbon Microsystems lip for the Carlos Sainz bumper. That should help drop the front end of the car down a little bit, because right now probably quite a bit of air is going under the car and creating a little bit of lift. After that, basically all we have to do is wait for Scott to send us some logs back for the rolling launch control, and pretty much ready to head to Texas. There's a couple little things that maybe in some future videos I'll touch up on. Tomorrow we'll definitely try to get a video out with putting that front lip on. Maybe go outside, let you guys see the car out in the light, because under here these lights kind of suck. But yeah, thank you for checking in. If you guys have anything else you want to see, want to talk about, let me know. I'll try to cover it in the next video. But yeah, awesome. Have a good one, guys.